Welcome to Pennsylvania in Focus. I'm Kristen Smith. Joining me today is the Center Square's Pennsylvania reporter, Christina Langell. Earlier this week, Representative Malcolm Kenyatta, who is a Democrat from Philadelphia, made a pretty long trek from the city to Harrisburg, stopping all along the way to talk about mass transit funding and the lack thereof. So, Christina, tell us more about what he had to say.
Yeah, so he walked 105 miles. That is the distance from where he was in Philly to Harrisburg. And like you said, he stopped along the way. He stopped in Westchester for a rally. He stopped in Lancaster for a rally. And then there were rallies in Philly and Harrisburg. So during this trek, he stopped and talked to a lot of people. He did a lot of Instagram lives. He brought a lot of attention to what he was doing. And when he got to Harrisburg, he made a speech about, frankly, asking the senators to come back to work because the House has passed 5 different resolutions to get funding for SEPTA and mass transit across the state. And the Senate has not voted on any of them. They proposed some things that they knew were non-starters, both for SEPTA and for the House. So there's just really been, as we've been discussing, this pretty strong gridlock when it comes to the Senate and the House on this issue.
Right. And speaking of coming back to work, actually, the Senate is scheduled to come back on Monday, September 8th. The House is a couple weeks after them. And considering that the Senate's been a lot more hesitant about what a mass transit deal is going to look like because they are concerned about future revenues, as they typically are, it'll be interesting to see where they take this conversation. They really have, the ball is in their court, truly, even though I think they probably argue because they passed a bill before they left the last time. But they have an opportunity to do something different, to maybe modify what the House has sent them. If there's an agreement reached, the House could come back sooner. But as it stands, we're into the fall session now, and those weeks are precious, very limited before we get into, past the holidays, and nothing happens until January. So they often fill in this time with a lot of last minute or very important things that didn't make it into the budget, but that they want done. This time, though, we don't have a budget, and top of this list is mass transit. And, we've been reporting on for the last several months now how big of a deal this is, but what's happening now that we're getting into the fall? What is this mass transit deficit doing?
Well, we passed the deadline for SEPTA, so there have been huge service cuts and rate hikes. So for the people living in Philadelphia, there are people who are using ride shares to get to work. We have a lot of students in Philadelphia rely on the public bus to get to school. That's really been an issue. What you're seeing is a city that provides a lot of the economic engine of the state starting to run into issues from not having transit. And the longer this goes on, those who, represent the transit authorities say, hey, we're going to have to start cutting people. And once we cut people, it's not going to be so easy to bring them back. So right now they're still in a window where they could fix it. But once they start losing people, it's going to cause some real havoc, especially as we move into next year and a lot of the increase of traffic that we're expecting in the city and across the state from the 250th birthday of America.
Right. And I think there's an interesting parallel. I know at least across my area, we have, although it's privatized, our bus driver shortage has become untenable for a lot of districts. There's people who their buses just aren't showing up because they don't have enough drivers. And like you said, it's hard once you don't have those people to replace them. And there's training, there's onboarding that has to happen. And the amount of disruption that just school buses not showing up has caused for people in these suburban areas. I imagine that on a much larger scale for these cities where these where mass transit is even a more integral part of their lives.
Yeah, yeah. And you're seeing, people might think, oh, well, that's a problem for those people. The argument that a lot of people in the House are making, including Kenyatta, is that you may not take public transit, but you also don't want to drive with 275,000 more cars on the road. That will cause traffic. That will impact your life. Also, you may not take public transit, but the nurse who's going to do surgery for you, I believe, was the example someone gave during this rally. They need public transit to get to work. The people who you need to interact with and who you rely on for all kinds of different things in this life may take public transit. So it's not something that, even if you feel pretty secure, I mean, it's kind of similar to what we're seeing with healthcare when we say, oh, well, if we cut Medicaid, then, well, that's a problem for the people on Medicaid. It's also going to, take away funding from hospitals, and that's going to impact people who have private insurance. So even if you yourself are in a position where you don't have to use some of these public services, you are impacted by the lack of these public services for others, for sure.
Well, we will certainly stay on top of this ripple effect that is continuing to happen, and maybe we'll have some developments here in the next couple of weeks. To find out, follow us at thecentersquare.com/Pennsylvania.